In this video, we're going to take a look at logical values in Excel. Logical values are the values true and false. And before we start here, I'm just going to zoom in a little bit on this, make it just a little bit easier to see here. Okay. So I have a number 10 and I have a number 20 in these two cells. And logical values in Excel are usually determined by comparing two values. So I'm going to compare the number 10 with the number 20. And there are 6 ways that I can compare. I can check to see if the two cells are equal, if one is greater than the other or less than the other, if one is greater than or equal to or less than or equal to, or if they are not equal to each other. Okay, and these 3 symbols right here are the ones you learned in algebra class. These 3 here are not, because those symbols are not available on a standard keyboard. So we have to make some symbols up using 2 keystrokes. So greater than or equal to is a greater than sign followed by an equal sign. Less than or equal to is a less than symbol followed by an equal symbol. And not equal is a less than followed by a greater than. Okay. So let's get started here. Let's go to B3 here. And I want to know, is A1 equal to B1? Okay. Well, if I just type A1 equals B1 and hit enter, nothing happens because we need to put a formula in here. We want Excel to do some calculations. So I'm going to edit that cell, and it's a formula, so I need to start with an equal sign. Now that looks funny, but if you remember that the equal sign is just telling us that that's a formula, then what we really have is what's inside of the parentheses right there, and that seems to make a little bit more sense. So, but you got to have that equal sign there. So it's going to tell me is A1 equal to B1, and when I hit the enter key, it should tell me no, they are not equal. So I get the value false. Then I want to know, is A1 greater than B1, and 10 is not greater than 1, so I should get false again. And then I want to know, is A1 less than B1, and it is, so I should get true there. Then I want to know, is A1 greater than or equal to B1, and it is not, so I should get false. Then is A1 less than or equal to, less than or equal to B1, and it is, so I get true. And the last one is, are they not equal to one another? So is A1 and not equal to B1, and they are not equal, so that should be true. Okay. A couple of things about what we just did here. First of all, these, while they look like the word true and they look like the word false, they're not really text values. Okay. They are called logical values, and Excel does 2 things to let you know that these are not text, but they are logical values. There are only 2 logical values, by the way, true and false. And the 2 things that Excel does is it makes these into all caps, and it centers them. Now, when we have numbers in Excel, numbers are typically right aligned by default. When we have text in Excel, like we have here, they're typically left aligned. You notice I changed the alignment on these, but the default alignment is to left align. And logical values are something different, so they get centered. And that's Excel's way of telling you that they're not text and they're not numbers. So what does that mean? Well, if I want the word true to appear someplace, let's just try typing the word true in a cell and hit enter. And you see what happens? I typed it in lowercase letters like I would type any ordinary text. And it got changed to caps and it got centered. I'm going to do the same thing with false. I'm typing it in lowercase letters. It looks like the word false to me, but it gets shifted to uppercase and it gets centered. So those are logical values, even though I typed in words. Now, what if you really want the word true to appear someplace in a cell? Well, then you type an apostrophe first and then the word true. And it doesn't show you the apostrophe. That's just indicating that this is text. And notice it does not get capitalized and it stays left aligned. Same thing with false. If I start with an apostrophe and type the word false, now those are words. And let's take a look. This is the value. It's the logical value true. This is the word true. It's the text value true. So we got a logical value here and a text value here. And I'm going to ask Excel, are those 2 things the same? They look a lot the same. Is B10 equal to B12? And what's it going to tell us? They are not equal. Okay. So, well, you might be thinking, well, yeah, but I didn't capitalize this one. So let's go back here and capitalize it and hit enter, and they're still false. And the reason is because this is a logical value true, this is the text value true. The same thing would happen if I tried comparing these. It's going to tell me they are not equal because this is a logical value and this is a text value. It's a little bit confusing, but it makes a difference when you're doing formulas in Excel. When you use formulas in Excel, you always want to use logical values, true and false. So you do not do something like you don't put false with quotation marks around it or true with quotation marks around it when you're doing a logical test or using the if function, which we'll get to in another video. So it's a little bit confusing because they all look the same, but you need to realize that they are not the same internally in Excel. Okay. The other thing I want to take a look at is just right here on these symbols that are made up of two symbols combined. Excel's a little bit picky here. If you try putting an equal sign in the middle, it'll tell you that there's an error. And it says we want to correct it to this, and it's taking my equal sign out of there. I'm going to say no. And it still tells me there's a problem with the formula, and a lot of times the help in Excel is not really all that good. I really didn't get much out of reading that error message. So really you kind of just have to know that that's not allowed, and when you do put a space in there by mistake, then you are going to get an error from Excel. It may not be a real easy error to understand, but you will get an error. Now let's try what happens if we put a space in there. If we put a space in there, and if I go back and try to edit this cell, it's okay with that. But normally you don't put those in, just kind of run it all together like that. So those are the two logical values in Excel, and there are a number of logical functions. If you go up here and click on your Formulas tab, you will see that there is a group of functions here called logical, and they're in a little book with a purple exclamation mark, and we have a handful of logical functions there, and we'll take a look at least some of these in some future videos.